We need to be talking about this issue, not just sweeping it under the mat.
Because we can't all age gracefully together. We all need each other. And we are stronger together, and we will be stronger together.
Welcome to the Victorian Seniors Festival. This program has been produced on the lands of the Wurundjeri, Bunurong and Djadjurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation. We pay respect to elders past and present and welcome all First Nations people listening today. Please enjoy this episode from VALS LGBTI Aging and Aged Care called Step Out, Step In, Step Up, hosted by Andrew Rogers and featuring community voices of LGBTI elders Peter, Liz, Tracie, Robbie, Toni and Sally.
VALS LGBTI Aging and Aged Care, part of Rainbow Health Australia at the Australian Research Centre in Sex Health and Society at Latrobe University, has for over a decade worked to empower older lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, gender diverse and intersex people and improve their visibility and ageing experience. In these episodes, Andrew from VALS LGBTI Aging and Aged Care talks with older lesbian, gay and transgender and gender diverse people about their fabulous lives and unique perspectives of ageing. And we ask how or why taking it easy as an older LGBTI person sometimes means stepping up and finding your voice.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the second of two episodes, Taking It Easy from an Older LGBTI Perspective. These are podcasts for the Victorian Seniors Festival. My name is Andrew and my pronouns are he and him. And with me today I have a wonderful group of older lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans folk, and I'll take a moment to get them all to introduce themselves.
Hello everybody, my name is Peter. I live in rural Victoria. I'm an older gay man. He, him are my pronouns, and I'm mostly a happy man.
Hi everybody, I'm Lizzie. I'm an older lesbian woman. I'm also a grandma and a mum, of course. And I live in rural Victoria, and I am just about as happy as Peter, I'd say.
Hi, my name's Sally. I live in regional rural Victoria as well. I use the pronoun she, her. I identify as female with a trans history and happy as.
Hi, my name's Tracie. I'm a lived experience advocate. I run various support groups for all kind of life issues, and I'm an ageing old lesbian, though I don't really like labels. I am me. That's it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Toni. I don't know quite what I am. I identify as gender diverse. I use the pronouns she, her, or they, and them. And I'm having a great fun day today with all these people, and hope you have as much fun as we do.
Hello, my name is Robbie and I'm a she, her from rural Victoria or regional, not quite sure, out there somewhere.
Thanks, Robbie. So we have one person from the suburbs and everybody else is from rural and regional areas spread right around the state of Victoria. Welcome to this afternoon. Last time we talked about what it is to be older and lesbian, gay, bisexual and or transgender or has an intersex variation. Today what we're going to do is take that a step further and think about what it is that inspires us to take it easy by stepping up and stepping out, to find our voices and to speak about our experience and what we want as older lesbian, gay and bisexual and transgender people as we age. I know that all of you have taken opportunities to speak about what it is to be older and part of the LGBTIQ community. What was it that inspired you to step up and step out, to speak and find your voice? I'll start with you, Peter.
The inspiration sort of snuck up on me. I didn't even know that I would ever be inspired. But circumstances through a group that I belong to, the Benchwig Alliance, gave me an opportunity to show that I could actually organise things and say things. It was very nice. I loved it. And as a result of that, I was given other opportunities. And so all of a sudden I was inspired just because I was talking about me and us and the things that were important to me. And the inspiration sort of was given to me, really. I'm thrilled that it was. And as a result of that, I'm now super inspired because it's so wonderful to be able to talk about my experiences, my life, the things that I want with no obstacles, barriers, nothing. It's fabulous. I love the fact that I actually have a voice and I can now use it.
Thank you, Peter. Lizzie?
I think for me it was a bit of a slow journey in the beginning, and then I went to work at the Victorian AIDS Council and I met some extraordinarily wonderful people who had been living with HIV for many, many years, who had also been through incredible stigma and discrimination prior to that. It was an absolute privilege to listen to their stories, but I also realised that they didn't have a voice, that no one had heard these stories, and I didn't want them to be lost. So I decided that I would write some papers and I would present as many papers as I could to the aged care sector or whoever would listen. And that's what I did. So that really inspired me to speak up and step out. And I guess in doing that, it helped me to find my own voice too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lizzie. Sally?
Oh, what inspires me? Wow. I have to step back in time a bit and say when I first came out, which is only 13 odd years ago, my sister said to me, "You're going to be a good talker because you don't want younger people to go through what you went through when you were that age." And I found my voice through self-affirmation, started public speaking. I got continually invited to go to healthcare workshops, etc. Found my own voice and all of a sudden decided I need to be talking about trans issues and older folk issues through the work I was doing. So now I just stand up and I tell what I tell, my truth.
Thank you. And that's kind of with the aim of younger folk or people of any age not having to go through what you went through.
Well, I don't think anyone should have to hide for 58 years.
Yeah, thank you. Tracie?
You know, when you're a foster child, you grow up very fast and you know that you don't have a voice. No matter what you do, what happens to you, you don't have a voice. No matter how much you speak, nobody hears. And I think having that lifestyle, it's very, very hard to want to speak out because you know that no matter what you say, nobody wants to hear. You spend your whole life being traumatised. You end up going unhealed through life. You go through recovery and then at the end of it, you come out a whole different person, a person that you decide that you're not going to be silent anymore, that I am here and I am going to speak up, and you do find your voice. And once you find your voice, you begin to help others. And I think that's what's more important. Your voice is everyone else's Band-Aid.
Thank you. That was absolutely brilliant, Tracie. Thank you. Toni?
I put up with 60 years basically of not being allowed to speak out. I compensated for that by getting involved with lots and lots of things and helping lots and lots of people. I was involved with a mental health self-help group, and one of the things they were telling me was, you should be yourself. I basically took that on board and developed a voice and started doing some of the many things that I'd wanted to do that I'd never felt comfortable or had the courage before to do. That opened up a whole new world, mainly in the LGBTI community, to do lots of things with lots of people. I was often being told, we want to hear your story. You've done a lot of things. We just want to hear what you've done and how you managed to do it.
Thanks, Toni. Robbie?
There was a film on trans male and trans female, sort of a day in the life of. And at the first showing, which was up in Bendigo, we had a Q&A after it that went on for about 40 minutes. Incredible interest, and all the seats were full. There was about 100 people, COVID being the limitation. And there was that question, why did I do it? And I ended up bursting into tears, but I basically said, no one should have to struggle the way I did. So it's the old story of struggling through trans and trying to survive.
What this is saying to me is that there are perhaps two reasons why we all step up and we step out. One is to ensure that younger generations don't have to face the same struggles that we did in earlier decades or even in recent times in affirming who we are. But the other thing that's equally as important there, and I think I heard it from a couple of you, about talking about what can go missing, and that is a conversation around what it is like now for us as older people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual or transgender, the issues that we face, and speaking about not just our history, but also about what are the issues now.
Yes, that's right. They removed gender dysphoria as a mental disease in 2019, yet to do some operational procedures, etc., you have to go through the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, and at least one has to be a psychiatrist, and one can be a clinical psychologist. I just find that absolutely discriminatory. If I'm a cis woman and want a facelift or whatever, I don't have to run to all these psychs. So why does it occur now? I just think it's so wrong.
Peter, if I can turn to you, because I heard you speak last week at an event that Tracie organised in Sunbury, an expo for older LGBTI people, and you very powerfully spoke about one of your motivations being, I am older and this is what I want now. Do you want to share a little bit about what drives that for you?
It's important to speak up and say, this is what I want, because unless you ask for something, you're never going to get it. And there are things that I want. I'm getting older and I want my retirement years to be comfortable. I want facilities available to me. I spoke about social stuff. I really think that's important, particularly in country areas because we're a little bit more dispersed. I think it's really important for us to make our voices heard now because it's important for us as people to have the equality that's around and have the facilities that we need. I really want local social activities. I really want to know that the aged care in my town is ready for me if that's where I ever go. I want to know that when I go to a doctor, there's not going to be something going on because it's a little country town. I want all of those things for me now because I need them. And basically, I want them.
Thank you. Tracie, last week in Sunbury, you ran an expo. You had a number of speakers talking about issues around ageing and well-being for older LGBTI people. What I'd like to know from you is what motivated you to pick ageing and older LGBTI people as something for an expo? What motivated you to organise that event?
When the Ida Hobbit was on in May, I was one of the people that helped do the raising of the flag in Sunbury, which had never been done before. And much to my surprise, I noticed that the entire crowd was over 50. These people I'd never seen before. I was astounded. Now, I've lived in Sunbury since 1994. I did not even know these people existed, especially a lot of trans people, which I thought was quite sad considering I'm involved in so many community groups. So it got me wondering where these people are actually going. I asked one particular trans woman and she said she goes into the city because that's where she felt safest. And I thought that was absolutely tragic. Since that day, I've actually made a point of asking quite a few people what it is that is their issue being an older LGBTI. And they've all said the same thing, lack of services, lack of social interaction, and just overall just being invisible in their own town. And when one town says it, you think, all right, then that town needs to work on it. But when you're literally talking to one person after another, you start to see there's some serious cracks in the system. It seems once you're over 30, as an LGBTI, you cease to exist. All focus is on youth, and anyone older, it's like, well, you're old enough now, get on with it and go and do whatever you want. We don't really have the time, the money, or the inclination to help you. And that is very, very sad. I met a man who was living with HIV, and I think he moved me the most because he has to travel long distances to get the service that he's needed to get on public transport because he has to go to specialised places. We need so much work done. We need to have a place where older LGBTI can self-advocate. And I think that would be a great thing if everybody actually had on hand where they knew they could get network services. It really is a big problem. I mean, I think the expo spoke volumes because everyone sat there and listened to every speaker that spoke about issues, and they were all sitting there nodding their head in agreement, and you could hear a pin drop. I have never been to an event where the audience was so attentive. They were literally hanging off these speakers' words. Why does it take an expo to give people the knowledge that should be readily available to them? And from what I'm hearing, you're going to see little expos popping up everywhere now. And that's good because we need a lot of narrative. We need to be talking about this issue, not just sweeping it under the mat.
Toni, older people and addressing issues that older people within the LGBTIQ plus community might face, you speak about those experiences. What is it that motivates you to do that?
I think the motivation that drives me is simply the fact that there's so much that isn't being done. There are so many people that are missing out. I have a voice and I need to verbalise all those things that people are missing out on and bring them to as many people as possible, and to particularly bring it to the notice of politicians and decision makers. There's a cohort there of LGBTI older people that are just not recognised by the institutional world in Victoria. One of the issues is the fact that there's no records as to how many of us there are or where we are. That's an issue that needs to be addressed. I realise that that's probably a federal issue rather than a state issue, but it needs to be addressed because if they don't know how many thousands of us there are, they can just ignore us because, according to them, we're not on the radar.
And if we're not on the radar, then we're not included in policy. We're not included in decisions around activities or programs or supports that might be made available because we're invisible. And I think one of the things that unites us all in that sense is a sense that older LGBTI people can be invisible with their particular and specific needs as they age. Sally, you drive all over the state, going to events and speaking. What motivates you to do that?
I've driven over this beautiful state of Victoria for the last 10 years talking. The longer I've been driving, the more I've been hearing that the LGBTI community is so underrepresented, nearly to the point of forgotten. The ABS Bureau of Stats, we all had to do it thing, LGBTIQ wasn't mentioned in it. We need to be mentioned in it. So across Gippsland, I'm going out at the moment talking with a good friend, and we're aiming at service providers, etc., to find out what they know of us, which is being limited apparently. So we're trying to get together. We're going to produce a survey which gets the Gippsland LGBTI community to tell us what they need, what they want, so we can go up and say, hey, we got stats for Gippsland. This is what the LGBTI community need. This is what they want. Why? Because I'm in that community myself and I want to be represented. I mightn't personally need the stuff at the moment, but down the track, I can't go 10 years down the track and say I'm going to be happily living at home, doing my gardens, driving around the state. We need to be able to activate and do stuff. Finding the numbers, the figures, etc., is one way of doing it.
Thanks, Sally. I think, Lizzie, you often talk to what Sally's just mentioned about we need these services and we need these supports and we need these programs to be put into place now because we are an ageing population. And I know you're quite an advocate for that. What drives that for you?
Well, all my working life I've worked with older people, the ageing population, and I think in this day and age, all older people, regardless of their sexuality, are not heard. They don't have a voice. For me, in my area of expertise and my area of work, I like to be that voice for older people living with HIV. And not just with HIV, I think about people that might be in transgender. What happens when people go into aged care facilities or even into a general hospital when they're older? And confidentiality, all the things that we knew about HIV in the 80s has gone out the door. No one gives a damn about people's confidentiality in most aspects of their lives when they're older. It seems like they don't matter. They're asexual, they don't have a brain, and really and truly, they don't have a voice. From first hand, I've been in hospital recently, and I have seen older people, and I'm in that age bracket but older than myself, who really have tried to advocate for themselves but have been squashed. I think the reward for me in speaking out and stepping up for the area that I was involved in is to give people in a minority group a voice to try and educate the general public in aged care or even in the community at large about the problems that people face. And I was quite interested in hearing Tracie's expo and her experience there. And I remember years ago, probably 10 years ago now, speaking at the International HIV/AIDS Conference here in Melbourne to many, many countries, and listening to them all talk about very similar problems of ageing: stigma and discrimination, lack of services, lack of respect. And I think for me the challenges are to keep speaking up about that, and the rewards are to try and educate as many people as I can about what it is that we need. The other area I'd just like to touch on is that in the ageing population, if we look back at our historical viewpoint, a lot of our older people do not come out of the closet. You can go into a nursing home of 200 people and you get told there are no gay or transgender people in this facility. Of course there are, but a lot of people, unfortunately, that have lived the life that they've lived of stigma and discrimination remain closeted. So it's very, very difficult sometimes to get the numbers and that we need to represent. I guess for me it's about education and about treating people with respect and trying to understand what it is they are saying to us, because sexuality is something that most people don't talk about. So it takes time and trust for those things to come to the forefront. I guess we just have to keep pushing it, but we are very low as far as I'm concerned on the radar with policies at the moment. But, I have witnessed firsthand transgender people going into aged care facilities and being treated quite abominably. And I'm not saying this happens in every facility, but if you've worked and advocated for yourself, like Sally has says, to become who she needs to be, and then is sent into aged care facility and that's stripped away, that is absolutely not acceptable. And so we can only be a loud voice in advocating and pushing and making sure that people's rights are respected. And I guess that's where our voices come in. We have to be loud and clear, and we do not put up with any crap.
Thank you. What I'm going to add here is these things don't just apply to residential aged care. They are in all forms of programs that are for and about older people. So when you're talking about inclusion there, Lizzie, I think it's important for everybody to understand we're talking about programs that the state government might run around ageing, around social inclusion, because the state government has a responsibility to ensure the health and well-being of everybody in terms of inclusion. We know that older LGBTI people are more likely to live alone and therefore face greater risks in being isolated, being disconnected from community, and there is the importance of being able to not only connect with older people, but in being able to connect with others from the LGBTI community as you age.
You're listening to the Victorian Seniors Festival, For more information about the festival and to hear more episodes like this one, visit seniorsonline.vic.gov.au.
What I'm hearing from you all is that there is a rapidly growing awareness that older LGBTI people have history and experience that informs how they live their lives now, and that there is a desire not to be erased, not to be forgotten, and that's both by the mainstream population as LGBTI people and by the LGBTI community or the LGBTIQA plus community because we're older. How important is it, do you think, that awareness of what it is to age becomes a greater topic of conversation for the entire LGBTIQA plus community? Start with you, Tracie.
Referring back to the expo, one of the biggest issues I came across was actually getting LGBTI people to attend. Here we are putting on an event aimed for them, about them, and unfortunately they don't see that they actually fall into the category of ageing. We have a hell of a lot of Peter Pan syndromes, and they didn't want to attend because they didn't appreciate being told that they were old. And I thought, well, how do you help people? It makes it very, very hard when you've got organisations that are willing to help, but you've got to want to be helped. And I think we have to educate people on how best to accept the fact that you are ageing, that you do need help, and you will eventually need help further along the line. And if we can't get it through to them now, by the time in 10 years' time, when they're 10 years older, they're in for a very rude shock.
And that's one of the things that we do know is that quite often people do not begin to think about accessing care and support that they might need until they reach a crisis point. And what I'm hearing is the importance of empowering all older LGBTI voices. Peter, how important is it for this conversation to become much bigger within the LGBTIQ plus community?
One word, it's essential. I believe that as a community, we have to start looking after ourselves. And I know that if I had my life over again and I was 20 and I knew an older LGBTIQ plus person who needed help, I would have gone to help them. I think it's absolutely essential that this divide that's occurring between older and younger people, and where's the line? I mean, who makes the decision? I think it needs to be bridged because there's so many good things that we could do together that would make our community far stronger, far more efficient, far more effective, far more everything. We would be happier if we didn't go past that, use by date. I don't want to be silent. I really want those younger people to get on board too. If we had a chance to sit with younger people and talk about what it means to be older, because there is a whole lot of stuff about being older. We become more frail. In the countryside, we're more isolated. We need to have some social connection. We need help sometimes to attend an appointment, or maybe our grass needs mowing. I don't know, but there's lots and lots of things that younger people, I'm sure, would be happy to do if only we could make that connection.
Thank you very much. And Toni, going on what you said earlier about this needs to be talked about much more, not just with bureaucrats or politicians, but how do you feel about it in terms of talking with community?
I think within community, particularly the LGBTI community, there's almost an ignorance about ageing and its effects and the needs that people develop as they mature. I think people seem to have almost amnesia about thinking about their ageing. And the ridiculous thing about this whole thing is that everybody will age, irrespective of how old they are at the moment. Unless you're unfortunate to die by accident or illness, you're going to get old. And I'm quite happy to work with people to work out what's the best way to try and inform people. I'm not quite sure exactly how you go about it, but there's a need for it. until you inform people, you can't really educate them. And every organisation as well.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a really powerful ask of the community, that the community has to step up to actually become aware of what it means to age as somebody who is lesbian, gay, bisexual or transgender or has an intersex variation. Because, as you quite rightly say, there can be an amnesia about it. There can be well, we haven't got there yet. And I suspect that what we're seeing is somehow that people who are older are having to establish the organisations, the rights, the connections as they age. That younger people aren't doing it with them and for them. And what you're saying, Toni, is that there is an ask of community to step up and help older people. Don't stand on their shoulders. Get off their shoulders and walk with them through this journeying of what we need to put in place. And I know for you, Sally, you spend a lot of time with people from community. How do you find community response to ageing?
I am an older person at 71. When I go out and public speak and meet publicly with groups of people, I try to be with the people I am with at the time. And if I can do that and the young people see me with them, they start to, or I hope they start to think that they're connecting with us older LGBTI folk. Was it 3 years ago now, I future-proofed my own home by convincing myself I needed a 20-year plan, which would put me to 88. I've raised all the garden beds. I've made all of the flower beds low maintenance. I'm doing everything I can to make my life easier in that respect. It gives me the time to go out and talk to people, help people if I can. I'm getting people ringing me up, asking me questions all the time. And I can honestly say that I can answer them because I have that knowledge of being that older person in the community. Will the younger people grab and hold on to our shirt tails or coat tails, whatever, and come on our journey with us? We hope. And that's all we can do is we hope that they will, and they are. And definitely get off our shoulders. Don't stand on our shoulders. Walk with us. Don't follow me. I might get you lost. Don't lead me. I might wander off. Walk with me and be my friend is my expression for that.
Yeah. Lizzie, you were really quite strong a few minutes back there on what needs to be understood about ageing for older LGBTI folk. What do you think the community's response has been, and how would you change it?
Look, I think a couple of issues. Societal view on older people is not terribly healthy, and we really need to advocate and try and change that and empower older people to be a voice for themselves and to get over the fear of becoming older. I have no problems in knowing that I am becoming older. You know, I just want to age gracefully and as well as I can. I am incredibly lucky in the area I live in because I have younger older people in my street as well as younger people, and they're all incredibly helpful. You know, I've had a few problems with my knees, etc. My lawns have been done, rubbish tins are put out for me, my cat's been fed whilst I've been in hospital. These are the practical things that people can do, because I think families get quite tired of the ongoing responsibilities, if you like, of giving all the time. With the LGBTI community, I take on Tracie's comment that over 39, you're off the radar. I remember once putting in a submission about ageing and being told, well, we only look after people up to the age of 40. So I think that speaks volumes. So for me, it's about empowering each other, about our ageing process and what that might entail, to help us overcome the fears that we have around that by having some practical solutions. We need to know what might happen, and I think it's great that Sally has prepared garden beds, etc. This is having an informed decision around what may happen in the future for her. I certainly have done the same thing. I live in a home now that has no steps, no stairs, raised garden beds, all in preparation that I can continue in my own home for as long as I can. I think for me, it's about being stronger together as an LGBTI community, but also to involve our general community. Because we can't all age gracefully together. We all need each other. So if we can have a voice and speak out, it's amazing how people are willing to give. And we are stronger together, and we will be stronger together. I don't really know the answers to everything. I only know that for myself, that I have learnt to speak out, and it's been a long time coming. I've been quite fearful about speaking out about my sexuality because I have had some pretty terrible experiences. But I've found now that if I am strong and I do stand on my own shoulders, other people do stand by my side. We all stand together and rely on each other and share our stories. We can't always rely on government intervention. So I think to be prepared as we go through this journey, as prepared as we can be, is probably the best answer.
Thank you. Thank you. That being prepared, everything from raising your garden beds to refitting the bathroom to doing things like an advanced care plan, absolutely essential for all of us. And it means being aware of what's available and what our rights are. Now, Robbie, I know that you've got a 9-acre property. Raising garden beds might be a bit of a challenge for you. But what's your response to the notion that we need to do more work within the LGBTIQA+ community to have an understanding of what it is to age?
One of the things that I always look at, the LGBTI, is a very small portion of ageing. And until the community stop being ageist, we're at the end of a long queue. Everything is attuned to the younger people, all the health and everything else like that. I mean, in some of the, they send out those tests if you got blood in your stool because of bowel cancer. Well, they stopped that at maybe around 74. They won't send you out any more tests, apparently, right? So our government in health regions are ageist. So, to me, it's a long haul up the hill for LGBTI. So to me, there's just a big, long haul for the community to stop being ageist anyway. And then we got room to manoeuvre for us LGBTI people to move in. And in regards planning, 9 acres, and I'm on a 2-story, 100-year-old house. The one thing about dyslexia is you're either very anal or you're sort of a scatterbrain. Well, I'm in the scatterbrain bit. So planning for the future, I haven't done one little bit.
So if there's one thing you can take away from this exercise and finding your voice is, I need to get planning. It's interesting in what you said there about the older population generally, and it's something that often gets overlooked when we talk about older LGBTI people, and that is that this is, in contemporary language, an intersection. Are we older than LGBTI, or are we LGBTI and older? And that can mean, that intersection, that we actually fall through the gaps. We get missed by both the community who should be looking after us, and we get lost in the mainstream because of ageism. And here's a question for you, a proposition. How do you folk respond to the statement, as said by somebody with some influence, that older LGBTI people cannot be emerging leaders? Toni, I see you chuckling. What's your response to that statement?
I think it's an absolutely ridiculous statement and horribly wrong. Older people can be, in fact, need to be better leaders in lots of areas. There needs to be some balance of older people's needs and rights with those of younger people.
Thank you. Peter?
I agree. I think it's ridiculous. As an official emerging older LGBTIAQ+ man, I'm proof of the pudding. Hello, my voice has been silent for all of my life, and suddenly here it is. So I want other people to hear that.
Thank you very much. And Robbie?
I just slip back to the bottom line where democracy, everyone's voice is equal. Full stop. I'm astounded that someone could even make such a stupid statement. Appalls me.
Tracie?
I think anybody that's got anything relevant to add to society should be heard.
Regardless of age.
Regardless of age, absolutely.
Thank you. Sally?
Total rubbish. There's 7 leaders doing a podcast right now, and we're all LGBTI folk. I hope I didn't out anyone.
Thank you. You've identified something I was going to identify, and that is that all of us here, all 7 of us, are people who didn't find their advocacy voices until they were in their late 50s or their early 60s. Lizzie, what do you make of the statement?
Well, I think you can become a leader at any age, and some of the best leaders in the world, like Gandhi, weren't young people. So, that person needs to be educated.
Thank you. All of us have talked about the importance of older LGBTI people finding their voices. It seems to me that the notion of taking it easy is actually one that involves being involved, being empowered, having rights, speaking up and finding your voice. If you could have one individual idea for empowering older LGBTI people, what would it be? Tracie?
I would like people to feel independent, that they didn't need to rely on an organisation, they didn't need to ask their partner's permission. They had the strength to just say, right, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to do, without feeling that they need to be answerable to anyone. And I think that's a big thing that people forget. A lot of people are browbeaten and they can't get to services, don't want to. So I'd like to see people have the freedom of choice.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
One of the things that I've found about this whole process of finding my voice is that all of a sudden I'm in a space with people, relaxed. And to me, if you just go into that whole taking it easy thing, suddenly the weight of my life is removed and I can just take it easy. Second thing I want to say is to let them be known that they've been seen and that they've been listened to and you've heard what they've said. And hopefully there's something at the end of that about what action might be taken regarding what they've said.
Okay. Robbie?
Taking it easy makes me blush. I was a pilot. I took it easy all my life. I loved the cockpit. It was my happy spot. So I took it easy all my life. Now, working in acceptance, I'm lucky in that the small township I'm in, they're all very accepting. So it's hard for me, how do you go out to push the boundaries? The biggest thing I ever did was driving the heritage trains at Daylesford. There was no female drivers, and I just ended up turning up in a skirt and a nice jumper, etc., and drove the train, and it's been accepted. And I always, for many years, drove the chill-out trains, on Daylesford's yearly Pride push, and it was accepted. So one of the things I guess I can say is I just go out there, and I'm a very shy person, but I've had the hide to go out there and found that it works.
So being visible.
Yeah.
Being visible actually empowers people, doesn't it?
It does.
Toni, what are your ideas for empowering older LGBTI people?
We need to enable older LGBTI people to get together and to talk about their situation. One of the things I'd like to see changed is this idea that old age is when you take it easy. I think that needs to be rephrased, because I think taking it easy is almost a derogatory term amongst the younger generations. I'd like to see it phrased in some way that older people develop balance in their lives rather than take it easy. It may be that you do take it easy sometimes or all the time, but that's your personal decision, not an attitude that exists in community. You should be encouraged by your peers to make a contribution, however small it may be. You contribute to fit your capabilities at the time.
Thank you. Sally? Empowering older LGBTI people, what would you like to see?
I think I've been empowered by my own community, being where I am in Bass Coast, Gippsland, by the fact that my visibility is almost invisible because that's where I want to be. I'm just another person in the community, a ratepayer, a voter, and, use the car parks at the local supermarket. What do I want to see for empowerment is all service providers in healthcare, education, government, be it whichever of the three tiers we're talking about, all need to grasp the fact that we are 15% of the population and they have to, on their own behalf, learn about us because we all need their support at some stage in our lives.
Thank you. Lizzie, what are your ideas for empowering all older LGBTI people?
Firstly, older LGBTI people do matter. We need to really honour ourselves and honour other people and let them know that. We are stronger together, which I've said before. We need to celebrate our lives. Celebration may be difficult for people that have an illness or an impairment or whatever, but usually if we look hard enough and we work together, there are areas of celebration in our lives. Some celebrations that I can think of include the dance club. We all celebrated the fact that we could get up there and have a dance, or we could just sit and talk and drink champagne, whatever we wanted to. But we all had a common cause. We could all sit together and talk about things, which is very important. With the yes vote, for me, the celebration of weddings has been absolutely wonderful. I went to a wedding recently of two women that have been together nearly 30 years and raised 5 children together. And to see those two women getting married was absolutely fantastic. It was full of LGBTI community, full of Maoris from New Zealand and full of Indigenous people from the top end of Australia. A great celebration amongst all people. Recently, I was in hospital feeling goddamn miserable, and I happened to be scrolling through Facebook and was reading some stories of people in other public hospitals and their terrible stories of woe, and another friend who had broken her leg, and I was able to sort of say, oh yes, well, I'm in hospital too. And from that, I must have had 100 replies from other people offering help. So social media can be a really good source to bring us together. But there is nothing like face-to-face, holding hands, being together, looking each other in the eyes, to celebrate together, to make change and to make our lives easier and a happier place to be. So I'd like to see us have many more functions and many more get-togethers where we're actually being together and stronger together.
Because we are better together in that sense, aren't we?
Totally.
Well, yeah. One last question. If you can give a message to somebody who is older, a lesbian, gay, bisexual or transgender or has an intersex variation and is listening to this podcast, what would your message to that older LGBTI person be?
My answer to that is pretty simple. There's a lot of organisations that cover that exact sphere. Go out and give them a phone call and just start an introduction.
So break out of the isolation.
Just break out one phone call. Team up with someone.
Thank you. Peter?
I would say the same thing. Just go out, find a group and find like-minded people and you'll find it a wonderful experience. However, it may be that you have difficulty with that. So here's my telephone number. Let's have a chat. I would feel bad if I didn't offer something personal. Yes, of course, go out and find other people in your area. That's a great thing to do. But if that's too hard and you can't do that, then here's somebody who will listen to you. Give me a call. Here's my number.
Yep. Tracie?
Just say to people, you've lived your life the way everyone else wanted you to live it. Now it's your time to live it your way.
Fabulous. Lizzie, what would your message be?
My message would be try and keep as connected as you can, and I think we all have a responsibility in that. It only takes a phone call from one other person to say, look, this is happening next weekend or that's happening, so that you can reach out and you can be with like-minded people in a LGBTI community. Respect each other and stay in touch and make sure the grapevines there are letting people know what is on and what's coming up, and ask if they can get there, and if not, maybe we could try and find a way for people to get there.
Toni.
I would say be bold. Get up off your bum and go and talk with somebody. If you don't have anybody, here's my phone number. We can go out and have a coffee.
And Sally, one piece of advice for somebody who is older that might empower them.
Be yourself. I've done just that and it's worked for me. Be yourself. It can work for you.
Thank you. I'd like to add my own perspective on one thing for empowering older LGBTI people. And I pick up on Lizzie's point about be connected, but being connected also means understanding that we have rights, that we are entitled, if I may use that word, to be supported, to engage in programs that are truly inclusive, but we won't get those unless we start asking for them. Picking up on points that both Toni and Sally made earlier about there needs to be recognition in the provision of supports and programs and inclusion. We need to, as older people, whether we're older LGBTI people or simply older people, to pick up on Robbie's point, we need to be using our voices to say, in an unapologetic way, this is what we want, this is what we need, and this is what we want for you to provide for us. And that's not just to the mainstream society. That is a conversation, I think, we need to be putting to the LGBTI QA plus community. We have these needs, we have these wants, we have this role to play in community. We have a part to play. We're not museum pieces, we're not library books. We are, in fact, as Toni said very early on, able to contribute, but we need to use our voices to stop apologising for who we are and to stand up and say, we are still here, we are older, we are in fact bolder.
You've been listening to the Victorian Seniors Festival. Thank you to Peter, Liz, Tracie, Robbie, Toni and Sally for sharing your stories with us today. This episode was curated by Pauline Cremary and Andrew Rogers from VALS LGBTI Ageing and Aged Care and recorded at 3CR Community Radio with most speakers participating remotely on Zoom. This podcast was produced with support from the Seniors Festival radio production team. Creative producer Nat Grant, technical director Nikki Stott, and post-production director Michaeli Veshaw. For more information about the festival and to hear more episodes like this one, visit seniorsonline.vic.gov.au.